You're listening to Forever Fierce with Catherine Grace O'Connell, only on LA Talk Radio. Forever Fierce with Catherine Grace O'Connell, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Forever Fierce Show. I am Catherine Grace O'Connell, and we have a super exciting show today. I don't think it's every day that you get a Baywatch babe right next to you, and super excited to have Alexandra Paul. Many of you may recognize her from the Baywatch series. Alexandra is an actress with 100 movie and television credits to her name, including starring for 5 seasons on the TV series Baywatch. She's also starred in 14 movies for the Lifetime Network. Alexandra has been driving electric cars for 28 years. She's an Ironman finisher, long-distance swimmer, and a vegan, a passionate vegan. She's now a certified health coach, helping people get happier through healthy lifestyle changes. Wow. And with that, I want to introduce Alexandra Paul, a Baywatch babe and a midlife woman who is in the midst of amazing fierce reinvention. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Catherine. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And thank you for the introduction from Alyssa Goodman, my co-host today. Alyssa had reached out to Alexandra, and I can't wait to hear how you guys originally connected. But thank you so much for bringing this amazing woman onto the show today.
Well, hi, it's good to be here today, and thank you for coming, Alexandra. We met because we did a film together a couple of years ago. I was working on a small film, and I remember our casting director, we were trying to cast the role of a tennis player's mother. And I remember our casting director said, how about Alexandra Paul? And I said, she would do this? And there you were, and you showed up on set, and the things that I remember about you were how professional you were, and how much
so
I
nice.
appreciated it. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
One of the things I do remember is how you stuck with your convictions. And I remember you said things, you were the first actress I've ever encountered that said, I won't wear makeup that was tested on animals.
Oh, in my contract.
Yeah, in your
that's
contract.
right.
And I'm like, that's wonderful. So I'm so glad somebody stood up and said that, because sometimes when you're a producer, you don't think about those things, and it's nice that somebody does. And that was great. And I remember you talking about an electric car, and I have one now. And I'll tell you a funny story off camera about how I ran out of power on the 405.
Oh dear. Oh wait. Now everyone's going to be afraid of electric cars.
No, you know what?
But I can
tell
say
you.
that I have run out of gasoline when I was in my younger days.
Yeah, I ran out of
So
power,
funny.
but I somehow managed to get home, and I cut off up Mulholland and then came downhill and regenerated. It was crazy, and it was just Saturday coming home from our Chico's shoot, which is funny, but it never happened. But anyway, that's
There's a
not what we're
circular
here for.
story going on here.
It reminded me
Oh
of you,
my
and I'm
gosh.
like, that's
Oh
it's
my
just
gosh,
funny.
that's very funny.
But anyway, and
Yeah, that
that's
was
how-
16 Love was the movie.
It was
and,
a movie called 16
was
Love
really
that was
lovely.
super fun, and Alex.
It's
played
on
a mom.
Netflix.
It is on Netflix. It's actually on Hulu now too.
Oh,
And I was just thinking, I've got to find something else to work with you on.
yeah, that would be great.
we should do that.
You talk about small films. I love working on independent films. Not only because it's more often a very creative endeavor, because the producers are more hands-on and on the set, and also because the parts are often very good for women. And It's
Right.
not just women being an ornament for a superhero.
That's very true.
And I guess you would know about that being an ornament for a superhero. There's a lot of that going on in Hollywood, wouldn't you say?
Television is getting really, really good
Much better,
for
yeah.
women's roles.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of superhero movies too. I did see Black Panther a couple weeks ago and was pleased to see all the strong women, beautiful black women in that movie.
I hear you. And speaking of strong women and what's going on, and I know we're going to divert a little bit here, but the Oscars, we're coming off of the Oscars. And I'd love to get your input. Did you watch the Oscars? And what do you think about what's going on in women's empowerment and all these people speaking up and speaking out?
I did not watch the Oscars. I had a pig vigil to go to. On Sunday nights, I go to something called LA Animal Saves Vigil, where we stand in front of a slaughterhouse in downtown LA and give water to the pigs before they go into the slaughterhouse, and just bear witness to, because as you said, I am a passionate vegan.
Oh my God.
So I did not see the show.
That's an amazing. From what I read about you, everything that I researched, you do walk the talk. You're a passionate vegan, clearly, which we're going to talk about today, what led you to this latest Fierce Reinvented. But you're someone who's so passionate. You've actually gone to jail for your activism and your belief system, which is amazing.
I have. I've committed civil disobedience quite a lot, maybe.
And proudly, I hear.
I'm sure, yes, proudly. I did. I went to, probably 16 times I've been arrested for through activism and peaceful disobedience. And I ended up in the Los Angeles Detention Center for 5 days after protesting the Iraq War. And the reason I went to jail was because we don't pay a fine, we don't argue, we just say if you're nonviolent, you accept whatever punishment the law gives you for breaking the law peacefully. And the women were very confused about why I was there when I said, well, yeah, I was there because I sort of chose to be by committing civil disobedience.
That's an amazing story, an amazing story that someone who has a belief system that is so strong, and it's very Gandhi. The passive resistance. You just, so tell me, where does this come from? You grew up a vegetarian, is that right? Or you became one at a very early age and then later on adopted veganism?
Yes, I became a vegetarian when I was 14 when I read a book called Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lappé. This was 1977. Mm-hmm. And also because I was 14 and I wanted to make my parents mad.
Did it work?
No, they were very supportive. In fact, so my brother actually became a vegan a couple years later, my younger brother. So he's been a vegan for 40 years. I didn't become a vegan until 7 years ago. It took me a long time. So I did have a rider in my contract since the early 1980s, since my early 20s, about not having anything tested on animals, and I stopped wearing animals very, very early. So when I would go out with the wardrobe person to buy clothes for my character, they were always really pleased because I was veering over to Payless, which is the only place in the 80s that you could buy shoes that weren't leather. And I was a very inexpensive actress in terms of getting wardrobe because it was, mostly Sears, things that didn't have leather, wool, or silk in them. So you'd go to Sears and Payless and things like that.
That's an amazing story, and I believe I read, some stories, some interviews say you were in your teens, some early 20s, where you started having some issues with body image and bulimia that you're very honest and open about, that has also led you to your, we'll get to what you're doing currently. Clearly, I know people want to jump to Baywatch, but I really want to talk about that because I think it's really important, and then how that led to Baywatch and how that affected you in a world that is very body conscious.
So I can actually tie it into Baywatch because I became, I was anorexic when I was 15 and then became bulimic to try and cover up. So when you're bulimic, it's easier to hide than when you're anorexic. So, and then, I couldn't not binge and purge, and I was binging and purging for 12 years. During making movies, sometimes I'll look at a scene and I'll remember, I threw up in my trailer just before that. It's very painful, actually, to think of that. When I was 20, and I was in therapy the entire time to try and get over this, and I was honest to the point where I would say, yes, I'm bulimic, but I would never call somebody up right before I was about to binge and say, please help me, please stop me. So I was I was honest after the fact. So I was in therapy, which helped me a lot discover why I was struggling with eating disorders. And it was really Overeaters Anonymous, the 12-step program that I went into when I was 28, and a month later I stopped throwing up. I went through this 12 steps and had a sponsor for 10 years.
Wow. Now, you were a model before you became an actress, correct?
I was a model, but I was anorexic and bulimic before that, no, so it was not a trigger. It was like I put myself into modeling. Wow. And which is the worst place to be. And it was actually the reason I left modeling a couple years later, because I told my agent, I'm too bulimic. And she said, so acting actually felt freeing, because with acting they didn't they didn't want specific measurements.
And then you get a job
didn't
where
have-
you're wearing a bathing suit all day.
Yes.
That must have been such an interesting transition emotionally.
But I had stopped throwing up the year before. If I had been bulimic and been offered Baywatch, I would have said no, because I think just as self-preservation.
Right,
But because I had stopped throwing up the year before, it was really I felt such a relief, and I felt so much better about myself. And yeah, I had days when I felt fat, and I'm sure we all did. I know we all did. But the fact that I wasn't throwing up was such an accomplishment.
Well, what did you learn from that process? So, clearly you've been on a long path of self-awareness and personal development. You said you got a lot of help and you stopped the behaviors before Baywatch. And, I've never really shared this, I think, publicly. I also was anorexic and was bulimic, so I can
It's very common.
understand. Very common. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of emotional things going on the inside. So what did you learn from that process? And I understand the 12 steps helped you later, but during that process, sounds like you learned a lot about yourself and what led you to those.
And by the way, every single woman that I know has issues with body or food or food, except for my friend Roya, who grew up in Iran. And she came here later in life, and she is incredibly healthy about food. She's but otherwise everybody else who's an American
She's the rare
woman
one.
has a
Sorry.
problem.
Yeah.
So
drive through McDonald's maybe has something to do with that.
there's a lot of reasons, but
Yeah.
for me, what I found was that I was so trying to be good for everybody that I couldn't say no, and I was not authentic to myself. I was so busy trying to please everybody else. I thought being nice was the most important thing. And what I realized during my therapy was that being respected is more important. And so when I started saying no, meaning no to, I didn't really want to go spend time with this person, I would be able to say no instead of, oh, sure, when really inside I meant, oh, God, I don't want to.
I love that. I love the honesty of that, and I think many women out there can relate to your experience. We're sort of culturally, I don't know if the word programming, but our culture is very much women as people pleasers because we're mothers and the roles that we naturally play. So I know a lot of people, I know me included, watched you on Baywatch and watched all these amazingly beautiful women. What was it like for you to get that call, and what was it like for you to be on that show?
In terms of body and
in terms
image?
of you, the whole experience, I mean, all of it. Clearly, I want to dive into that as far as, I believe your contract said you couldn't gain any weight for everyone on the cast. Is that
Right.
what I heard? So clearly, people want to know the pressure and stuff, but I also just want to know, what was it like to get that call? What was it like to have that experience? Because that really catapulted you into a place where everybody knew who Alexandra Paul was. At least I know I did, and all my friends.
Right. No, it's true. I had been acting for 10 years, and I had done a lot of studio
You've
films.
done some movies, yeah.
Yeah,
big
I'd starred
movies.
opposite Tom Hanks in Dragnet, and I had done John Carpenter's Christine, and I'd done a movie with Jeff Bridges and Andy Garcia. So I had a strong movie career. So actually, even though I was reticent to go onto television because this was the early 1990s.
TV movie people were movie stars, and TV stars were TV stars, and they never crossed paths
Right.
back then.
Back then they did not.
Interesting. So
It was
you would know
actually
more.
just starting
Yeah.
to, and my
Yeah.
manager, Jodie Cooper, God bless her, said, Alexandra, you're doing a lot of independent movies, and Germany funds a lot of independent movies, and Germany loves Baywatch, so if you want to, this will help with your independent movie career. So I said yes. I was terrified of doing a series because there was a commitment. I mean, I was 28, and I thought, don't commit to a man, don't commit to a series, don't commit to a tattoo. That was my thing. Well, it took me a while to commit to a man, another 10 years, but one of the best decisions I ever made. And Baywatch was really my favorite job out of the 100 roles that I have gotten. It was an incredible experience. And so when you're in it, you don't really, by the way, when I actually said yes to it, it wasn't that popular. It was popular overseas, but here it was looked at with just total disdain. it wasn't until the end of my first season that Americans began to know that it was popular. They still looked at it with disdain.
Well, it was at a time, I think, when there were shows like 90210. There was like this TV sensationalism that was just starting, where there was this fan base for TV shows. And I think that Baywatch was absolutely on the forefront of that, because everybody knew who you were, and, you know, the reputation
Is
of the
that
show
true? I
was
mean, I don't know. When
probably
you're in it,
bigger.
you don't really
yeah,
know.
I mean, did you find you were
mean,
recognized all over the place and things like
yes,
that?
and it was different era than now, where you have the internet. It was pre-internet. So
right.
I was on the show 1991, 1995. So those 5 seasons, there were only 3 outlets. There was People Magazine, there was the National Enquirer, and Us magazine. That was it, really. And so we didn't have a lot of paparazzi. Pamela Anderson had a bit of a paparazzi problem, but otherwise none of the rest of us did.
You would have today.
Yeah,
Today
no
we would have for
question, no
sure,
question.
but so I had trouble going into grocery stores, places, airports, malls, things like that, because people would talk and stare, and it was uncomfortable. But in terms of my self-esteem, I had been acting for a long time, so it wasn't a big deal for me, and I became more comfortable with myself because the first season, I had long brown hair, and I was the only brown-haired and no breast. I have very small breasts, and everyone else had always had, and the show had been on for a few years, had always had breast implants. So I was a different kind of Baywatch actress.
The athletic.
I was considered athletic. And then the second, because I realized I couldn't be that babe. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
The beautiful women like Pamela, Nicole, and Gina, they were doing it so much better. Why was I even trying to be that? So I cut my hair, and I became more, and actually started lifting weights. So I got more toned and just athletic. So it was really a lesson in me being more authentic. To
You just
me.
being you, staying true to you, and it sounds
And instead
like
of trying to be a beautiful,
be something you're not.
curvaceous blonde, which they were beautiful. They are beautiful still, but I couldn't fill that role. So why even try?
It sounds like all that therapy before really helped you have such a strong foundation going into this. So was there any point that the old sort of stories came up during that process, or it was pretty much, I don't want to say smooth sailing, but you were obviously in a very strong place of self-empowerment and self-confidence, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was loved. I had a boyfriend who was wonderful, Andrew. We were together for 3.5 years, and he was a really good person, and I felt, and it's never occurred to me to compare myself to other women.
Now that's unusual.
And I had a guy come up to me and ask me, so how does it feel to work with all those beautiful blondes? And I knew what he was saying was, how do you feel not being, he meant not being as pretty, as sexy as they. And I had a moment of like hurt feelings, and then I realized that everybody has different tastes, and that I was who I was, and it was okay. There was quite a few of those kind of incidences where it was Alexandra's the smart one, the not as pretty one, the not as sexy one. And the truth is, I agreed with them. I am smart, and I didn't have that same kind of beauty and sexiness that they have. Even if you gave me long blonde hair and fake boobs, I could not have the sensuality that Pamela has.
But it's a different sexy.
It's
because
different.
That's a self-assuredness is the sexiest thing ever.
And what I knew is I was
You know?
having a ton of sex myself. So I didn't feel insecure and unloved, you know?
I want to high five you on that. I just feel like when somebody says, you just have to high five that. I don't know why. It was an impulse.
You're still doing it with your husband. It looks like you spoon every morning or something.
I have an amazing husband.
You have an
yeah.
amazing
Yeah,
husband.
yeah. And yes, you're right. We're still doing it. Yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I want to high five yesterday. You guys might be a little jealous out there, but
It's good for you.
no, I think that's a great story, and I love what you said, because I think most people, at least I know from me, outside looking in, I'd be like, at that space in my life in my late 20s, I'd have been so busy comparing myself and putting myself down. So you had some incredible inner work that you'd done.
I mean, Yes, I've been in therapy for 12 years also, since I was 16.
Also, just out of curiosity, because you had a twin sister, you inevitably were always going to have a comparison, somebody that you might have been a mirror to yourself, comparing yourself. Do you think that you probably had a lifetime of comparisons in a sense?
Oh, that's
that by the
so
time, like I just
interesting.
wonder, I mean, I have twins and I'm always comparing them, and it's inadvertent and it's not, in a bad way. It's just like, wow, you do this, you do that. So I wonder if you did that.
I remember I had a
Even
boyfriend
subconscious.
who said, you'll never need people as much as us ordinary people because you have your sister, Alexandra. And I think that that's true because I had her. It gives you a base of self-confidence because you'll never be alone, no matter what. But we were compared a lot when we were kids. I actually believe I'm twice the person because of my sister, because I tried to keep up with her athletically, and she was...
Keep up with? How can somebody out athletic you? I just want to know.
No, seriously. In
How's that
high
happen?
school, she was very,
Wow.
she still is very athletic. But so without her, I don't think I would be an athlete.
That's
I was really
amazing. So
trying
she
to-
set a high bar and you kept trying
Right.
to kind of get over it. So from what I've read, now tell me if this is true, before, you were working 12-hour days on set, which isn't unusual in Hollywood.
Right. It's actually a short day, right? A 12-hour day.
Yeah, I'm sure
Unless
you've
I'm
had-
directing, I get all my shots early. I'm just saying.
I can-
do.
I-
all right,
I know it. When I get a
That's
shot, I
awesome.
know I have it, and I don't make the actor agonize and go, can you do that again with a British accent? A little bit more
Good
of
for
this.
you, Alyssa.
I have
Good
personal
for you.
experience of that this weekend,
Yeah.
so I'd say that's
See,
very
I
true.
didn't make you shoot forever, right?
You
We got our
didn't.
shots and we moved.
Yeah, we got the
There you
rain
go.
to clear and we
Yeah.
were good. So, but how you started on the set with a really strong foundation. You supposedly worked out before you got there and you made sure healthy habits. You brought healthy food with you. So you didn't do, my daughter's an actress, the food truck and all the, the unhealthy snacks. And that sounds like it led to your new reinvention. But I want to hear, what was that experience like for you? And how did you said it really kept you in a really good emotional, mental state to be able to have this foundation that you could stick to.
Yeah. Well, it was a defense mechanism against, I was so afraid I was going to go back to throwing up and binging and throwing up that I was very, very controlling about how I took care of myself because it's so easy. I felt like, and I still feel like I'm a million miles away from throwing up again, but I could get there in a second. So I have to be always vigilant and think ahead when it comes to food. I don't have to do that with alcohol because I've never drank, but people who might have drank and have issues have to think ahead about that. So for me, was with food and I knew that in the morning, if I would get up early. 3:30 was mostly the time I got up when I was working because we usually had to be on the set by 6 or 6:30 by the time the sun came up. But so I'd get up and I'd just work out, go to Gold's Gym, which is opened at 4, and get a workout in before, and I would bring my own food to the set, my own, mostly water bottles so I didn't have to use plastic, but just my own so that I could always know that I wasn't without food and I didn't have to depend on anybody else, especially being a vegetarian at the time.
I think that's really powerful. This was a quote that I read that you said.
Uh-oh.
It's my consistent exercise program and clean eating habits give me a strong foundation of self-confidence no matter what Hollywood threw at me. I controlled my controllables, as my friend Jim likes to say, in a business where there's so much out of control.
Yeah.
So how did that lead you into what you're doing today, and how does that help build self-confidence?
Well, I think it's true that if I took care of myself and just took care of what I could, then whether I was good enough in the role or whether it was a really long day or stuff came up, then at least I had that going on for me. I'm sure you know that, how little control actors or people on a set can have. Anything can happen. So I knew I'd get it done, and then I just felt better. Probably also because the serotonin and dopamine release when you exercise.
You learn about all that.
And then I'm not beating myself up and distracting myself about what did I eat today or anything. I knew I had healthy choices available. And so as a health coach, I think really I really am aware now about how poor planning is one of the biggest reasons that people don't fall off their wagon, so to speak, with either food or exercise. So thinking ahead.
Right.
I just had a client last night where We had to, when she said, I want to get up early and work out, we had to work backwards all the way into the day before to make sure she got to bed early, to make sure she had the things that she needed for her workout the next morning. We had to plan backwards, and just having that discussion was really instrumental in making sure that she's successful in her goals.
So what do you actually do as a health coach? Like, what does that involve?
So as a health coach, I help people change their habits when they can't do it by themselves, okay? Because a lot of people know what to do. We need to eat real food that doesn't come from a package, and we need to move more. But integrating that into your life is not easy. And so, and it needs to be a personalized program, because I could tell you, Alyssa, you need to work out 5 times a week for 30 minutes, which is what
Alexandra.
You know that.
But
I say that every morning.
But you have kids and you have a job, and if you're on the set, what do you do?
Absolutely.
So as a health coach, I help you get
give me that extra
plan.
hour a day that doesn't exist
It doesn't exist.
Because I'm sitting here thinking, I want to be vegan. Like, you make it seem like a great idea for so many reasons. Obviously animals, obviously health. And I'm thinking, okay, what do I do to begin doing that? I'll call you tomorrow.
Well, you may.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I have learned, and I think that a lot of people make this mistake with their New Year's resolutions, is they bite off more than they can chew. So the first thing I would say to people, and this is what I do say, because I also have handed out a lot of leaflets for veganism, and people will say, oh, I just can't give up my cheese. And I say, okay, don't give up your cheese, but give up the stuff you don't really like that has animals first. You know, like your old leather belts or the milk. You can find a substitution. So there's a lot of things you can do in little steps. And little steps inspire us to do other steps that we didn't even plan on.
Well, that's what you really base your platform on, not making these sweeping life changes, because we kind of set people up to fail. So when a woman comes, like you talk about controlling the uncontrollables, in your clients, what do you see with uncontrollables? And give our audience, say, 3 steps they could take. Let's say they feel something's out of control in their own life. What are 3 things they could do that are simple? Because I know your framework is simple.
Yes. So, well, 90% of my clients want to lose some weight, and I'm assuming that a lot of your viewers might want to do the same. So let's start with that. One of the things I would encourage people to do is to track their food. They don't have to do it every day like I still do. That's probably left over from my fear of getting out of control and binging, is that I write down my food. It actually makes me feel calm, just to know that I'm being honest with myself. So I encourage people to just track their food for a couple weeks. And that's, or if it's a couple weeks is too big.
Do you find they do that? Do you find they follow through?
Well, as a coach, then, you know, if they don't want to, then we don't force them, because this is something I want to do as a lifelong. Then I figure out another way that we can maybe get more honesty in the food, which might be, can you call me at the end of the day and tell me what you ate today? So it would be different for each person.
So first step is really personal accountability in some format.
Accountability is huge. I mean, that's why a health coach works so well, is because at first someone feels accountable to someone else, a health coach. And then what I hope to do is get the habits ingrained so that they don't have to think about drinking more water instead of soda. You know, having sparkling water in their refrigerator and not buying this. That's my big tip, is if you're struggling with foods, do not keep them in your house. Because foods are drugs. These packaged foods with salt, sugar, and fat, they're drugs. And so we have to get them out of our kitchens, because at night when our willpower is low after a hard day at work, those foods are calling to us, and we think, oh, we're lazy, we have no willpower. No, it's not that. It's that they're drugs. And at the end of the day, we don't have willpower. It's a biological function that at the end of the day, our willpower reserve has been tapped out. That's why people end up overeating, overdrinking, not going to the gym at night, whereas it's much easier in the morning to take care of ourselves, because our willpower
I work
reserves.
out in the morning when I have time. That's like, if I don't get on that treadmill first thing in the morning, I'm not going to do it. It just, my day takes me away.
Yeah.
So to me, that is the time to do it, and then it sets you up for success the rest of the day, because you feel so good about your accomplishment earlier.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. So the first step would be some sort of personal awareness and accountability system. Tracking. Number 2 would be, if you've got some bad stuff in your house, clean out that cabinet, get that sugar out so you're not tempted. And number 3 would be...
And if you, by the way, if somebody really wants
it's not punishment.
Some ice cream and they're eating around, like eating everything in sight, then drive out and get that ice cream. Don't get a whole pint, get a smaller one, because we will tend to eat the whole pint.
Well, so have some joy in there. People tend to fail, like you said at the beginning, New Year's resolutions. We cut out everything. We're probably going to fail because we need some balance and joy in there.
Yes, you can't be deprived. I'm looking for, this is not a diet. I don't put my clients on diets. We want to change lifestyle. We want to make new habits. I, for example, used to start off the day with a muffin. And when my nutritionist told me I couldn't have the muffin, I literally cried.
That's it.
I cried.
Like, don't think about
because
the pig element.
I felt like something was being taken away. And she said, let's just try it for one day. And then I found something else, and I can't remember what it was because this was so long ago. This was 25 years ago. I found something else, oatmeal maybe, that I enjoyed. And so that became my new habit, and I haven't had a muffin in years.
We're also tricked into thinking certain things are healthy. Like when you hear the word bran muffin, you're thinking, I'm doing something good. Meanwhile, you have a muffin the size of a cake with so much sugar in it, but you think you're eating healthily because you're eating a bran muffin.
Yes, but if someone came to me and said they were eating a chocolate chip muffin, then we might go from a chocolate chip to a bran.
Sure.
But we'd make another step where we'd say, okay, can we find some bran cereal now? And then we'd move off the bran cereal. Or some of my clients, I have one client who he actually was a Coca-Cola addict. And he does not want to give it up completely. He just doesn't. And he's told me that. And so, I'm not going to force him to give it up completely. We're going to find a way for him to be healthier without having to give up everything. Because like you said, there needs to be joy. So my third tip is about making sure you're very specific in your goals. Because a lot of people will say for New Year's resolution, I'm just going to eat better. What does that mean? It means something different for everybody. So for some of my clients, I'm thinking of one in particular, it might be that instead of drinking the soda that she has at lunch, that she now replaces it with sparkling water, okay? Or she might eat three vegetables a week, which is not very much, but for her it is. So we have to be really specific in our goals. We can't be just, I'm going to eat better. That's the more, and I like to actually, and I encourage my clients to give me specific days and times where they're going to do this goal.
That's accountability again.
The more specific you are, the less in the moment you have to rely on willpower because you've already decided to do it. So you're not relying on willpower. Like for you, both of you work out in the mornings. You don't have to think about it because you've already planned
and
it.
It's the feeling of accomplishment that I have that I take with me. And as you said earlier, the endorphins that come with you. It's sort of like, look, I've already checked a massive box before 7 a.m. And that makes the rest of your day so much more powerful because you just feel stronger.
So even though you wake up and you're like, oh, I got to go to the gym, you know that afterwards it's going to feel worth it.
I go to the treadmill in my garage, and it works. Yeah.
It's close
If I had to go to
by.
the gym, I'd never get there.
And here's another thing
I know what I do. I know what I'm willing to do.
That's great because I have clients who go, I'll go to the gym, and they hate the gym.
Yeah.
And it's far away or it's cold and they don't want to get outside and turn on the car. So I say, well, what's easy?
Yeah.
Okay, so don't go to the gym. Do a video at home. If you need to. It's maybe not as strenuous as a class at the local gym, but at least you're doing it. So the best exercise is the exercise you'll do.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing that I think comes with age, because you know what you're going to do, so you stop lying to yourself about the things you're not going to do. I have been wanting to take a Pilates class for 30 years or so, and I just have never gotten to it. So it's never going to be in front of me like, God, I need to do that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get on a treadmill, I'm going to walk, I'm going to run. I know I'm going to do it. Just keep dreaming about Pilates, but do the treadmill until that day.
Good for
I thought your
you.
vision,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I hear you. So it
Yeah.
really sounds like it comes down to breaking patterns. And how we break patterns is, in your work, baby steps, because you don't want to overwhelm somebody, it sounds like. Is that how you... So let's say we've got a midlife woman out there who comes to you, and she's overweight, and we actually do have a lot of people in our community that say, we're trapped at home. I'm taking care of a child that's disabled. I don't have anyone. Help. I need help. What would you tell her?
I would tell her that, well, what are her goals? I would ask her what she wanted.
I know she's talking about weight loss, but I also know part of that, when you're trapped inside, is also a depression. A lot of these women talk about, they're not really in a very good state because they don't have any connection. They don't have anything that fills their lives.
So if she was looking for more connection, then we'd figure out how, and losing weight might be a byproduct because she'll feel happier and she'll eat more healthily because she'll have more joy and self-worth. We would find different things that she can do that either have worked in the past or that she can figure out that work within her parameters. Now, I'm just throwing this out, but if she has a disabled kid, to either have people come in, have a book group at her own house and organize that with her friends. So there are things that we can do that work within our parameters. They might not be ideal, the best thing ever.
You're working with what they give you.
Yeah.
And how,
There's so much that can be done if we just discuss it and really parse it and figure out
Well, that
what's
goes
workable.
to one of the things that we've been talking about a little bit is, how does one define health? Because when I talked to you, you said I'm like a health coach, because you always hear about life coaches and these different kinds of coaches, and health is not just physical, it's mental as well. And I think that's a big struggle. And when you said book club, I'm thinking, well, that's not going to get you in shape, but it's a mental health where you're talking to other people, you're inspired about something, and that's like one of the baby steps that leads to other things, I think, in a way.
So you're getting to the
Yeah.
holistic part of what you do.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
there's-
we
we're not
learned
just
that
physical.
the client has the answers. I don't have the answers. The client has the answers. My job is to ask the right questions and to bring out the positives in a person's life. I was in therapy for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers have been in therapy. And therapy is great. It helped me a lot. But what I did a lot in therapy was talk about what went wrong. Why am I the way I am now? Because of what went wrong in the past. What coaching does is we ask, what's going right and how can you build on that? Or what has gone right in the past that you can bring back and use those strengths? And what's right with you? What are you good at? What do you love? What brings you joy? Those are the kind of things that coaching is, in terms different from therapy. And then we talk about how rather than why.
Well, you talk about why choose me, and choose you because you've probably been through what most of your, at least a lot of what your clients have been through, and it sounds like you've built a lot of empathy and compassion so you can really relate on a personal level.
I appreciate you bringing that up. That's actually on my site, and that shows what a great podcast host you are for doing your research. Yeah, I believe that I have so much empathy for women who struggle with weight and body shame and just feeling that trapped feeling, because I was trapped in my addiction. And so I have so much, there's nothing that shocks me. When I, who have put my finger down my throat, kneeling over a toilet bowl, I mean, there's
judgments.
nothing, no judgments, no judgments anywhere. So nobody can tell me anything that makes me feel judgmental. So I feel that really helps me as a coach.
Safety for your clients, feeling safe to be vulnerable is important.
Completely. And I'm very honest about my own fears and things. If I don't talk about myself in my coaching, but in my life I am, and so I really try and show that feelings are never wrong, and the client really leads the sessions. It's an amazing technique, coaching. I've always been one with a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts and a lot of 2 cents here, but coaching really involves me pulling back, listening, and asking the right questions so that the client discovers. And whenever a client says to me, "Oh, you did this, you did that," I say, no, you did it, actually. I just sat back. and guided. And it's really amazing.
Now, how did you become a coach? I know that when I had asked you when we spoke on the phone before this, you said, well, I guess going backwards a little bit, reinvention is something that I think we all start doing at a certain point in our life. Everything that we were doing and what we were doing doesn't exactly work anymore. Obviously, the roles for you change. I think that, in Hollywood, roles they just change. There's lots of roles for older women, but they're farther and few between. And I think you mentioned that you had to find something new. So was this a natural progression? Like, how did you're still acting. Mm-hmm. You haven't given that up, but you now moved into coaching. Did you train, I don't want to use the word train, but did you study to be a coach? Mm-hmm. And so you bring a combination of your life experience as well as actual studying.
Yes, definitely. Okay. I definitely have been certified several times over, and also in plant-based nutrition also. And I decided to become a coach because I was getting fewer jobs and getting fewer opportunities that were interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And after being the lead in so many projects, getting small roles that didn't pay very much and weren't very interesting, just
not rewarding.
It sort of seemed like, wait, why am I doing this? So I wanted in my 70s to be able to still control my destiny and not wait for someone to call me. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, and I was about 50. I'm 54 now, so I was about 50, and I thought, I want to do something else. And I read books about how to find yourself, and the question that the answer I came up with was, I want to help people, especially women, and self-esteem. And it's funny because I actually have quite a few male clients too, and they have all the issues we do, but in a little slightly different. They verbalize them differently. Mm-hmm. And so I was hiking with my friend Jill one day, and she'd just gone through this course. I'd never heard of a health coach, and I thought, wow, health coaching. And I'd actually had a couple life coaches that had helped me a lot. So health coaching just focuses more on health in terms of the body and sleep. And we discuss career and social life and purpose, but just has more of an emphasis on
sleep is important.
Sleep is
vital.
Yeah.
So at 54, if you were to go back to that young woman who was struggling with anorexia, bulimia, and about to be cast, on Baywatch and out in the world in a very big way, what would you say to her now with the wisdom you have today?
Oh, gosh. Wow. That is such a good question. What would I say? Well, you know what? I really do. That you can be nice, which was so important to me, and say no to people, and you can be kind. Kindness is a huge priority to me. Be kind is one of the reasons I'm vegan. I'm vegan actually not for health reasons, but for ethical reasons. And so I can still be authentic and be kind to people. I don't have to be rude just because I'm saying no. And because authenticity and the struggle for that was really the core of my eating disorders, I think that would have really helped me.
Would you say be kind to yourself first?
Yes, I would. Thank you. That's very wise. Definitely include me. Self-care is now a big word now. It wasn't a word that I had known until I started coaching, but self-care is a big word, and I think it's an important one.
It is an important one. Have you learned that one yourself, Alyssa? Or is this
no, I have
process?
not.
Yeah, since you're a mom, and
as a mom, it's hard.
One of the other things we talked about on one of the previous shows was it took me. I remember when I turned 40. That's when I got my it hit me on the head that I don't have to do everything and be there for everybody. It was kind of like I had this F you, I'm 40 attitude. Like I'm not going to do that meeting because just to be nice or, whatever it was. And now, obviously I take care of my kids, take care of my family and do that because I can't not, but I want to, but at the same time, we do have to find creative ways for each of us, because we're all so different. What is your indulgence? And I've never, my indulgence really is coffee. I'm never going to give that up, no matter what, like your Diet Coke client.
That's great. And I would work with you and
I
say,
love
yes,
that
great, let's work on other things.
Every day you open up a new study, it's like coffee is really good for you, coffee is really bad for you. So I focus on the good for you one.
Of course.
But you just never
that's
know.
Important.
And,
there's also the balance of happiness I can see it gives you.
Yeah,
you need
and
to have
it gives
that,
me
as
everything.
You talked about that joy
It means
factor.
everything to me. And my mom died of breast cancer when she was 45. So I definitely have a different perspective on life, and sometimes I feel like my life in a lot of ways began when I turned 40. And you're always measuring, like when I turned 45, I'm thinking, okay, I'm at that age, and I felt like I was on a clock. But I think that the older we get, the more balance we find, which is kind of amazing. And we just feel more confident, more comfortable with ourselves and with every experience, because they say that, you are who you are based on your experiences shape you. And that's what I feel. How about you?
I think that's powerful. Like I said, I really haven't opened up. I'm pretty open about my story in general, and I come from a background of abuse. But like I said, I get anorexia, I get bulimia, and at least what I learned in that process, it's all about really self-deprivation you don't feel you deserve. Be it you're starving yourself from food, or you're vomiting up because you don't. It always comes from something much deeper inside our own sense of self-worth. And I think that's you guys are in Hollywood, you guys are in acting, we watch the Oscars, we watch what's going on, with women in our culture. I really think that's the biggest issue is self-worth.
So how do we get that? Because as a coach, I focus a lot on changing the things we do makes us feel good, like you said. If we can get in a little bit of exercise, we feel better about ourselves, we feel more confident. So as a coach, I do work a lot on the external, which feeds the internal. Whereas therapists will just maybe deal with just how are you feeling. And
I also feel, if I may, we say we feel like we don't deserve things, which I know is a big therapy kind of hot button, and it is a trigger to a lot of things. But the three of us are not sitting around not doing anything. And I'm doing what I do, how hard it is every day. And you're doing what you do no matter how hard it is. And you do, because we do want it and feel like we deserve it. So we are doing it because we feel we can give something. But I feel like I deserve to be a director, and I really want to be. And I don't get up and say that every day, but it's kind of like somebody once used to say to me, you're very negative. And I said, if I were really negative, because I'd be like, oh, I'm probably not going to get that job, or I'm not going to get that, thing. And it's almost like you're protecting yourself from the disappointment. But I wouldn't be here doing what I do every day, trying to do what I do, if I didn't feel like I deserved it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. I think,
deep down,
like you said, we have to own the fact that we are deserving, of good things. So I want to make sure, before we wrap up, that people can find you, because I think, what you do, the services are absolutely invaluable. And I think what you just said is really important. It comes down to a path of personal empowerment, really, and helping people change maybe those outside behaviors and patterns that transition into a personal empowerment on the inside and a self-confidence.
You're right when you say they're both. And sometimes we also have to ask, and I know we have to wrap up, but when I was throwing up like crazy, I told my friend Doug Warhead, I said, I hate it that I'm throwing up. And he goes, no, you don't. There's something it's giving you, otherwise you wouldn't do it anymore. And we have to look at what are things that we think are bad that we do. What are they giving us? Because humans are not self-destructive. We do it for a reason. Even if we're injecting heroin, we're doing it because something is more important about that heroin than other things.
I think that's a whole other, that's a
It's
Dr.
a whole other,
Phil.
yeah.
I would say that's a Dr. Phil show. Like,
You're absolutely right about that.
We're in some level, even being a victim on some level.
It gives you
right,
something. We have our stories.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we cling. I imagine you see that in your sessions, that people do cling. I know I did cling to my story. So what you do, I think, is kick ass. And I think there are many women out there watching right now that could really use your services. So we want to make sure they can find you. You have two different places to find you. One for Alexandra Paul coaching, and then another for your acting So please let people know how they can find you, how they can work with you, how they reach out to you.
Thank you so much. AlexandraCoaching.com, and I offer a 20-minute free consultation so that you can know whether health coaching would be beneficial to you. And then if I have an acting site called AlexandraPaul.com, and I also am on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, but I'm not as I don't know those URLs or whatever.
But
I'm there.
You and find
I'm
out,
there. Yes,
sure.
yes. They're on my sites actually at the top. So anyway, thank you so much for having me. It was really wonderful. Thanks so much for getting back in touch.
A pleasure.
Really.
It's delightful. And we're really kicking off, International Women's Day Month, Press for Progress. There'll be lots more women's empowerment coming this month. And it was just a delight. It's not every day you get to sit next to a Baywatch babe. And if I were, 20 years old, I might have been judging myself the entire time. I'm still probably judging myself.
And so much more.
I know, right? And so, truly, so much more. So thank you for joining us today. And Alyssa, thank you so much
Always
for
a
being
pleasure to
here,
be
as
here.
always. Thank you for the connection. And guys, stay tuned. We got another show coming up in 1 hour with Danny DeLillo. We'll be shooting it today and airing it next week, but all about, again, Press for Progress, International Women's Day. Stay tuned, guys. Cheers, beauties. Stay fierce.